I've been reflecting on what it might be important for people to know about circumstances at the time that we began the Women's Studies program at United Seminary. And what strikes me as particularly interesting, the thing that kind of hit me first, was the fact that we had so many of the components for a Women's Studies program in place before we actually named the program, before we institutionalized it. We had a large number of women students, and we had for quite a long time. Probably 2/3 of our students were women by 1990. We were, during those early years, the early 90s, collecting, perhaps I should say recruiting, a significant number of women faculty, a critical mass of women faculty, almost all of whom had interests in women's studies and aspects of the study, although in different disciplines, of women in theology and religion and ministry. We had a long history of teaching courses. I had taught a course for years on the history of women in American religion, and a course on women and religion and literature. Gail Yates taught one of the first courses, if not the first course in the country, I think in 1972, on women in American religion. We simply had a long history with courses related to women's studies, so those were not new to us. And we had a long history of struggle. A lot of the hard work had already been accomplished by the time that we began to say, we need a women's studies program. We have courses, we have faculty, we have students, we have commitment. Now we need a program, we need a concentration, and we need an actual degree program. We want it to be possible for students to get an MA in religious studies, because United by that time also had a reputation as a very good place for women's scholars and as a place that produced scholarship about women. We also had very sympathetic male colleagues, which is a good thing to be able to say. Our colleagues were feminists married to feminists, so there was a great deal of support. And you will hear from other people the fact that some of the struggles over issues like inclusive language had taken place earlier in the 70s. Not always bliss during those struggles, but by that time, certainly by the 90s, long before really, we took it for granted that people used inclusive language, and we found a variety of ways to, I don't want to say enforce, let's say reinforce or affirm the use of inclusive language. There was a lot of general agreement that this was a good thing for the whole community and for the church and for the broader society. We might as well be grandiose about that. So the fact that we did not have to fight to get a women's studies program institutionalized was not only a blessing in a whole lot of academic ways, it also gave us the chance to be a little lighthearted. So after one of our first meetings of women faculty as women faculty, we went on an excursion to a t-shirt shop. And we had made for ourselves pink t-shirts with lightning bolts on them, and those t-shirts said Feminex. And we had pink baseball caps made with the same lightning bolts, and we would wear those on ceremonial occasions. So we tried out those t-shirts for the first time. We told the male faculty that we had a statement to make, and we were certainly not trying to stir up a lot of apprehension, perhaps a tiny bit of apprehension. And we said, if you will wait for us in this room, we will enter and make our statement. And we walked in our t-shirts and our hats, and we sang a song, "We Are Women, Hear Us Roar," and we did a not very elegant dance, but it was a lot of fun. It was one of those wonderful bonding communal moments that made lots of the struggles worthwhile. And of course, the struggles weren't over, and it was a good memory to reflect on when things might get a little tense now and then. At this same time, at the beginning of the initiation of the Women's Studies program, we were all of us, maybe not all of us, a lot of us, students, faculty, and graduates, very involved in putting together the Reimagining Conference, the famous and infamous conference which took place in 1993. And unlike many of our colleagues across the country, we did not have to apologize, we did not have to be fearful, we did not have to struggle to participate. Our community, the UTS community, was grateful to us, appreciated us, and affirmed what we had done. It was another instance of the way this community has supported women and the Women's Studies program. One final story about those early years. We had decided to institutionalize the Women's Studies program. We didn't have a lot of money to do it. We had the resources I've already mentioned in place, but there was no extra money. Wilson Yates was dean at that time, and I had gone to his office to say, do you think we could find $200 or $300 from the budget to have brochures made so that we could do a little marketing? And he promised to think that over seriously. I walked back to my office, and there was a little pink slip with a telephone number, the way we did things in those days, a little pink slip, a coincidence, divine providence. And it was a message to call back Syl Braun, one of our graduates. And when I called her, she said, my husband Jack and I would like to offer to the seminary a very large grant in order to bring into being a women's studies program, and I would like to name that after my grandmother. And I put down the phone after expressing immense gratitude. My heart was pounding, and I ran back to Wilson Yates's office to tell him the good news that was quickly announced.